Welcome back to the Excel basic tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show how to do some calculation in the Excel. In the previous video, we built a spreadsheet including the information about the students and then their grades in quiz and test. Now we are going to see how we are going to calculate the final grade, how we are going to use functions in the Excel to do some calculations. So this is the student numbers, student IDs, and student grades for 3 students. And I'm going to use the quiz grade and test grade in order to calculate final grade. Something that we need to identify is that how much is the quiz grade worth? Let's say it worth 40% of the final grade, or 0.4, and test grade is the 60% of the grade. So if I want to calculate the final grade, mathematically speaking, it would be 40% or 0.4 multiplied by 80, 40% of the quiz grade, plus 60% of 90. So the way I type down this is using the keyboard. Just simply use the keyboard numbers, parentheses, and the multiplication and the plus sign. Type it down in the cell. So now this is just a configuration of how we are going to calculate the final grade. But this doesn't give me the final number, right? So in order to force Excel to calculate this equation for me, somehow similar to regular calculators now, you need to put equal sign in the beginning. So from now on, whenever we want to calculate something in Excel, we start with the equal sign. So if I click enter, now you can see that it gives me a number 86. That would be a weighted average of 80 and 90. And the weight are 40% and 60%. So if you want to modify this function, double click on the cell. If you double click on the cell, you can see the function and you can change the function. Click enter. Now I want to calculate this for Alice. One way is repeating what we did here. Just calculate it manually. Another way is just using the cells that we already have the information in them, such as 85 and 95. So I would start with the equal. As the rule, we will start with the equal in the Excel whenever we want to calculate something. So we will start with the equal to, open parentheses, 40% multiply. So instead of 85, I just simply click on the 85. It selects the cell that includes 85 information. That cell is C and row 4. So the cell name is C4. You either type it or you simply select the cell directly. That would be the first part, plus 60% multiply by, and instead of typing down 95, I simply select the cell. This cell is D4. So 60% of D4, close parenthesis. So basically, instead of typing down, now we are selecting the cells. Click enter. That would give you the average, weighted average number. So again, if you want to modify it, you can simply double click and change any information that you want. Good. So now I want to calculate the same thing for Robert. When you already type down a formula, there is an easy way in the Excel to repeat this formula for the next row without typing down. So I know that in this cell, I'm gonna choose D5 and C5 instead of D4 and C4. So if you stand in the bottom right corner here, there is a small square here. Keep your mouse on it until the white plus sign turns to black plus sign. Drag it, click on it, drag it to the bottom cell. So if you do that, it will automatically select C5 and D5 and repeat the same function. Basically, it will repeat the same function you wrote here. Everything is the same. It only changes the selection of the cell. When you drag it down for one cell, it will change the selection toward down, one cell toward down. Let's add another record like Amy. It comes with one M. So the ID can be any number. In grade quiz 75, for example, and test grade 85. So now I want to calculate the final grade considering 40% weight for quizzes and 60% for the test grade. So one way is typing down the function, another way is repeating this function for the Amy too. Either I drag from here, it will automatically, if I double click on it, it will automatically shift the selected cells one cell toward down. But let's assume we don't have these two information. I'm gonna delete this two function. I'm going to select from the original function that we wrote. So I can drag it for multiple cells down and it will still repeat the same function for the cells. So it will bring down it will copy the function one cell down and also this one two cells down. That's a very useful tool in the Excel to decrease the amount of time that you are spending in the Excel. So instead of typing down one by one, you can type one function and repeat it for the other cells as well. That is the same thing if you want to repeat something over the columns, you just drag it to the right. If I drag it to the right, now it will drag the selection one cell to the right. So in this case, in our example, it doesn't have any meaning, but generally you can repeat any function toward lower or upper cells or cells to the left or to the right. So now here we type down the function. I still can repeat the functions towards up. So look at here, and instead of 80, I have the selection of cell, and instead of 90, I have the selection of cells. Now let's assume that for each class, I give different weights for quiz and test. Now I want the weight to be entered externally. I want to put the weights in this row. In order to have an empty row here, there are two ways you can do. Either select all the information, a group of cells, stand on the border and drag it down. Now you have an empty row here. Or you can select row 3 by clicking on the row ID, right click on insert. That would also provide an empty row. Now instead of putting the 40% here, I can just put the 40% here as the number and 60% here. And I'm going to put all information in the middle of each cell. Now I have student ID, quiz grade, test grade, and final grade. And quiz grade worth 40%, test grade worth 60%. In order to modify the items in the cell, I just double click on them. I can click on delete to delete that part, or I can go top part and delete or modify the text. Now, let's repeat this function. So this time, instead of 40, I can simply select C3, multiply by C4, and instead of 60, I can select this cell. So instead of typing 40% and 60%, I can simply select 40 and 60, the cells that includes that weight information. This is beneficial, especially if you want to change the weight. So look at here, look at this. I'm going to highlight this cell. Look at the cell when I change the weight. So let's assume that with 40% and 60% weight, the average grade is 86. Now I'm going to change the weight. Instead of 40, I'm going to type 50 and 50. Now the grade is changed to 85%. It's decreased because now the weight of quiz is increased and the value of quiz is less than value of test grade. So the point here is making the calculation totally automatic. So we don't have the numbers here, we just have the selection of the numbers of the cells. So now if I want to repeat this number for the other cells, what will happen? If I drag this function to the lower, you can see the average now is a large unlogical number. So this is because it's using 80 and 90 as the weight, like C4, 80, and D4, 90. However, I want to use C3 as the weight for quiz and D3 as the weight for this one. So one way is changing it manually, which is not efficient way, right? Another way is in the original formula, when I want to select the weight, I will fix that selection. If I want to fix this selection and this cell, I can use a $ before the column ID and after the column ID. So this will fix our cell selection. And I can fix D3 as well by adding $ before and after column ID. Okay, so if I add this $, it will fix my selection. If I repeat this function for the lower rows, it will change C4 and D4, but it doesn't change C3 and D3 selection. Let's try it. Enter. Now I will repeat this function for the lower cell. You can see that our selection of C3 and D3 is fixed, but the selection of the number, including D5 and C5, are changing based on the number of cells that we come down. So 90, I can repeat it for all of the cells. And again, the selection of weights are fixed, but the selection of the grades are not. So this is very beneficial. Now I can change the weight again. Let's assume this is 35. 0.35, and this is 0.65. You can see that when I change this number, it automatically changed the final grade. Or if I change the grade for the student, it will automatically update our calculation. Okay, another thing that I can do here is writing another function. Because the weight of the quiz and test should be equal to 100%, I can simply say the weight for test grade is 1 minus the weight for the quiz grade. So now, if I only need to change the quiz grade, let's say if this is 40%, we make sure that test grade weight is 60%, and it automatically changes everything in the final grade calculation. The next thing here is for you to understand that Excel has some built-in function that makes your life easier in terms of the calculation. This is somehow similar to the regular calculator, but it's much more expanded, right? So now let's assume that I want to know the average grade in this class of 4 students. One way is calculating the average, like simple way, 88 plus 91 plus this number and this number, right? That's a simple way I calculating average divided by number of students, 4, right? That's one way. And it is 84.2. Another way is, instead of adding up this number, just use a built-in function named sum. That's the sum of, open parentheses. You will select the range of the number that you want to calculate the average. So you can see that I selected from 88 to 81. That's from cell E4 through column to E7, the last cell. So that will give the summation. Then you divide them by the number of item, which is 4. 84.2. Another efficient way is just directly use the average function. That average function gives you the average of this number. You don't need to divide anything else. It just automatically calculates the summation of this 4 grade and divide it by the number of items, which are 4, close parenthesis. That would be the average of E4 through E7. That gives you the same number. So we have multiple functions that in the next video I'm going to show to you. There are multiple built-in functions in the Excel that you can use to do simple math or complicated math.